All right. Okay. So I'm guessing for the most of you, this is the first time you're seeing Business Central. Um, for reference, Business Central is the cloud-based ERP that Microsoft uh, has has developed over the past, I would say, 5 to 6 years intensively, and it's become the de facto kind of upgrade path to the cloud for anyone running legacy on-premise business, Dynamics products that are ERP driven, with the exception of AX, which has its own kind of equivalent in the cloud. But GP, Solomon, Nav, all those lovely products. Business Central is kind of the migration path um, for moving to the cloud. When you log into Business Central, you're going to get a link that's going to be shared to you. When you first log in, you'll be signing in with just your Microsoft account. So it's the same as your Office 365 account. Whatever you use to access Outlook or Teams, it's the same thing. So you log in, and as soon as you log in, you're greeted with this lovely screen here. Yours may look differently when you first log in, but we'll talk a little bit about why and how you can change it and all that good stuff. But okay, so we got to break down the landing page a little bit here. This is what Microsoft refers to as a role center. And the reason why it's called a role center is because all the stuff on this page will be different depending on what your role is. So if you're more on the AP side, you're going to see a lot more vendor and purchase stuff. If you're more on the AR side, you'll see customer and receivable stuff. If you're more of a general accountant, you'll see a whole smattering of, you know, bank and fixed asset stuff. And if you're in warehouse, you'll just see like picks and putaways and inventory, all that kind of stuff. So basically, the page changes depending on what your role is set up as. And we'll talk a bit about how you can switch those roles. But first and foremost, as soon as you log in the top left, you'll see your company name right here. So I'm in a company called Hilltop Test Company. When you're first doing your testing, you'll be in a similar kind of company. Just because we want to keep the one that you're going to go live with in a pristine state. But if you're in a test company, don't worry about breaking anything. Go ahead and just click around and get kind of your sea legs around the software. Because I find personally myself, I learn a lot better just by clicking around and messing around with stuff. These type of training sessions are great to get exposure to stuff, but usually it's really reinforced as soon as you go and you start playing around. So you see your company name up here, and if you ever want to go back to this homepage, you can just click on that company name. So if you're in another page, you can just click on the company name, and it takes you right back to the role center. You also see there's a little badge here in the top right. It's really tiny. I don't know if you can kind of see that. It says test right now, but that also is a little bit of an indicator if you're on a page like what company you're in. And the reason why that's important for you guys is, I mean, maybe not necessarily this cohort in this meeting, is that there's technically multiple companies in your environment. You have the GBA side of things and you have the Hilltop side of things. So switching companies and knowing where you are is important. But also you might be testing some stuff out. And so you want to make sure you're in a test company if you're just testing stuff out. And you want to make sure you're in the live company if you're doing your day-to-day stuff. Because I'll tell you from personal experience, back when I was on your side of things where I was working in the software, there has been many a time when I was in a test company, I'd go about my day, cut checks, I would put in invoices, only to realize, oh man, I'm in the wrong company. So it's a good little cue to let you know, you're in the right spot. All right, so I'm just gonna let Sadie in 1 second. All right, and so yeah, so in a nutshell, company name in the top left, as well as a badge in the top right. Now, before we dive into the pieces here, we're going to go into this little gear icon in the top right, which is your settings. When you click on that, you're greeted with a whole bunch of stuff here, but I'm going to zero in on this My Settings part. Because we're talking about what company you're in and all that good stuff, when you click on My Settings, this is where you can go to switch companies. So you see here it says I'm in the Hilltop Test Company. If I click on these little three dots next to it, that opens up the list of companies that I have permission to, I have access to. In this case, I have access to a whole bunch of them. In your scenario, you might be a smaller list, But in any event, if you did want to click and change companies, you just highlight and you click OK, and you switch over to that company. The whole page will do a little bit of a refresh to get you there, but that's kind of how you go about switching companies. If you recall, I said that this is called a role center and that it looks different depending on what role you're in. I'm in the accounting manager role. So that's why I see payments, I see approvals, because an accounting manager typically would need to have a little more visibility into those type of stuff, as well as across my little bookmarks here, I see customers and vendors and, budgets and a whole bunch of stuff, right? If I were to click these three dots and change my role to accounts payable coordinator, let's say, if I click OK and I click OK again, it does a little refresh to switch me over to that role. But what I should see is now I shouldn't expect to see any customer stuff because an accounts payable coordinator would not be involved with customers. But yeah, you can see here I have vendors, purchase requisitions, expense claims, AP batches, a lot more AP stuff, right? And then as well, these queues here, that's what these are called, and we'll go over what they are more driven and geared towards AP type, um, insights, let's say. I see purchase documents, I see POs, I see vendor stuff. That's all because right now my role is very much AP focused. And so, in the beginning, it might take a little bit of shuffling around to find out what role makes the most sense for you because you want to make sure you have all the um, most relevant stuff on your home screen and it's not just a whole bunch of noise that doesn't mean much to what you do. But I'm sure that's something, Jesse, Megan, and the team, will configure to the best of their capabilities uh, and match you to the right role that makes sense for you. But going back to that My Settings page, there's some other stuff on here too that you can use to kind of tailor your experience. You can change your region and language settings. So in the event that, well, in this case, it's only one option here, but there are other language language packs that can be added. So, we have like Mexican Spanish, we have French Canadian. There's all these kind of languages that can completely change the whole interface to a different language. So multiple people can be working with the same database, but in different languages. And that's not uncommon if you have one of those kind of transnational setups, right? But in your case, I think it'll be very much English US for the most part on everything. The reason why region and language are kind of split out is that language deals more with, like the words and the stuff you see. Region deals more with the formats of stuff because for whatever reason, here in Canada, for example, English Canada will change the date formats to year dash month dash day, which, IT folk love that stuff. But, in standard kind of US setup in ERPs is month, day, year, right? And in different locations, you'll have different setup. In a lot of places, it's also day, month, year, right? Going from smallest to largest. But that's what governs that stuff is the region settings. Also things like decimal places and dollar signs, which in North America is pretty uniform. But in other type place of the world, sometimes a decimal is actually a comma and a comma is a decimal. It's all very confusing. But in any event, that's where you can go to switch that stuff. You can also set your time zone here, and that really comes into effect when you're looking at anything that logs time. So if you're looking at the audit trail of, a posting, uh, changing your time zone allows you to kind of see it in your time zone. Everything is stored in universal time, but the time zone setting here will let you see it in the time zone that's relevant to you, right? Notifications, these are little pop-ups that you'll see throughout the system. And if they're annoying you, you can turn them off. You can just come in here and disable them. Like things such as, let's see, warning about unreleased orders. So if you're in an order and you leave it, it's like, hey, you didn't release this. If you're like, well, if you intentionally leave those and this is starting to bother, you can just turn off that notification. Some of the more useful ones are things like items running low in inventory. So, if you pick, a widget from your, you know, green warehouse or whatever, if you only have a few left and you're putting one on a purchase order or a sales order, it's going to let you know, hey, you're running low on widgets in the green warehouse. So these are slightly more useful, but a lot of them are just kind of trying to be helpful. for myself, after using the software for a while, I typically just disable everything. But you'll figure out what makes the most sense to you. Some other stuff, teaching tips uh, are exactly what they sound like. So basically, as you're going through the software, you'll have little green pop-ups that say, "Hey, do you want to learn more about this?" Or, "Hey, you should set this as that." You can turn those off if they're bugging you, or if you kind of already know how to do stuff. Or you could leave them on in the beginning at least to kind of just figure stuff out. Cloud storage is not something you have to worry about right now, but when you go live, this might be something IT will work with you to kind of set up in the event that you want documents to also be able to be copied to your OneDrive stuff. This being a Microsoft product, there's a lot of Microsoft tie-ins. Like there's Excel, there's Word, all that kind of stuff, as well as like OneDrive and Teams integration. So there's a lot of Microsoft stuff in there, which is it's good because it's all typically part of your subscription. And it lets you know when the last time was that you logged in, of course, based on your local time zone, right? All right, that's the My Settings button here. Kind of a very basic thing, but it's also very useful because this is where you go to change stuff around. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about was the work date. So work date is a date you can set to basically pretend you're in a specific day. Now, why would you want to do that? It's because uh, this is the date that defaults on all your transactions, all the new transactions that you're creating. When I was in AP, oftentimes, like now we're in April, right? So April 7th. When I was in AP, we would backdate everything to the end of last month for the whole first week of the month after, right? So we gave our project managers and everything the leeway to submit expenses and get everything paid and posted to for the prior period before we officially closed off the month and pulled our reports, right? So because of that, instead of having to manually every time I put in an invoice backdate it to March 31st, let's say, I would just set my work date to March 31st and I'd go on and just insert my transactions and it would just default. So it has varying usefulness to different depending on your role, but it can come in handy for sure, changing your work date. All right. So that was all just a little My Settings page. Looking at the page itself, the role center itself, at the very top, right next to the lovely company name, which we've talked about quite a bit, are these little tabs, if you want, or groupings across what is essentially a ribbon, really, at the top, that allow you to see by functional area, like under the finance side, what are the different pages you can go to. Now, there's no expectation that you need to know what all these are yet. We have different training sessions scheduled to go over specific roles and what pages and functions you'll need. But if you're looking for something, you can always menu dive up here to see, under cash management, I want to see my bank recs, let's say. Under fixed assets, I want to see, my fixed assets or insurance, and that kind of stuff. So that's what this top area does. It's not everything because this is a huge piece of software, right? So this is full cycle accounting as well as like warehousing and like manufacturing and assembly. So there's a lot of stuff in the system. And in the event that you wanted to actually dive through that stuff, you can go to this little hamburger menu here to explore all the business functionality that you're licensed for. So you can, explore, to your heart's content. You can take a look at everything if you wanted to dive into all this lovely stuff. Um, Not recommended, but in case you're looking for something and you're not quite sure where it is, you can explore this way. Again, if I click on the company name, I go back to my role center, which is my happy place, right? um, so we have a message from Sue. I went through the email already. So Megan, maybe I'll let you kind of field the questions while I just kind of go through the stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have that top ribbon area, and then we have our bookmarks here. So these bookmarks are areas that you might want to access more frequently, and you can bookmark pages up here so that you have kind of a shortcut to get to places. And we'll do that when I go over the search function. But just that this is the bookmark bar, this is the ribbon, this is the company name, all that good stuff. When you log in as well, you might see a headline. The headline becomes more useful over time as we have more data in it because it uses machine learning and kind of AI and all those fancy terms to kind of see what are some important transactional information highlights that you might want based on your role. So what am I? I'm right now accounting manager. You might say something like, you know, your largest customer is Acme Inc., or you know, your best selling item is, I don't know, widgets 101. I seem to be really stuck with widgets here. I'm not quite sure why. But yeah, so the headline, has different stuff. But typically when you log in, all it's going to say is, hey, and then it's also going to ask you if you want to click to go to like a help site and learn more stuff. Next to that, we have, and this is again not on every role center, but you have a little actions um, section. And from here, you can do some quick stuff. So if I click on there, I can click on import bank statement, or if I can go here, I can run a payment journal, or I can go and run a financial statement. So these little quick actions that maybe make sense for this role. But you can also use the search function, which is what I'm going to go over at the very soon after I finish the rest of this page. Scrolling down, a lot of it is fairly self-explanatory, but there's a little activities section here that gives you some highlights. So it tells you there's 12 overdue purchase documents, and when you hover over stuff, it kind of gives you a little bit of a tooltip, a little bit of an explanation about what that is. So it's like, whoa, I have 12 overdue payments. What are these? You can click on that and it shows you the underlying data for that. And the reason why they're all overdue is we import everything as at March 30th. Well, the due date is March 30th. We import everything as of February, the last day of February, and I think everything has like a 30-day payment term. But in any event, so that's where you can kind of click into this and really any of those numbers on the screen and see the underlying data there. And then same thing with the cash account balance. So it's saying 6.3 million. If I click on that, it'll show me all the cash accounts that make up that total, uh, right there on the home screen. All right, the next section, these are called queues. And these again are role dependent. So, it'll show you stuff that maybe makes sense for your role to see. As an accounting manager, this is probably where I'm going to look the most, which is what's waiting for me to approve. I do get an email notification on that stuff, but I might be in meetings all day. I might be ignoring my emails. I might have some, I don't know, some rules to move it to a folder so it's out of sight. But when I log in, I'll be able to see them right here, and I can click on my requests to approve, and I can delegate, reject, or accept them, and all that good stuff. There's also this user tasks function on here, which I find really cool. It's very underutilized. Not a lot of people use it, to be completely honest, but every role center has it. And it's kind of neat because when you click on it, it tells you kind of the stuff that the tasks that are assigned to you that you need to do. So right now, conducting training is due today, and that's why it's 25% complete. But I'm going to mark it as completed. We're going to pretend today's session is done. And then I can see here I have a monthly recurring task here called run depreciation. And I can assign it either to a person or assign it to a group of people. And I can see here at month end, I have to run the depreciation for fixed assets. And it's linked to the depreciation report. So I can click on that and I can actually calculate my depreciation right from this page. And then I can mark it as completed. Anyway, so that's a bit of a deep dive into something that's kind of niche, but this is an interesting function. You'll see if you're assigned anything, it'll show you kind of the stuff that you're assigned to. There's also product videos and some other stuff you can click on the right here. By and large, you'll probably be sticking more to the training videos we're doing here because these videos are for the generic Business Central instance, and you guys are running kind of the not-for-profit layer of Sparkrock 365 on top of Business Central. So these will have varying degrees of usefulness depending, for your specific use case. Scrolling down. Yeah.
So on that user tasks, would that work for assigning specific transactions? If I wanted to assign approval of a journal entry to someone, would that work for that, or is it more like categories of things?
It's more categories of things. For approval of stuff, we'll do that when we go over like the approval side of things in a different training session. There are ways you can definitely delegate and send to a substitute and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, these are more generic kind of, subject, task, and maybe linking to a page or report, but not to a specific record. Yeah. One of the cool thing about this is you can use this to build out a checklist. So if you have like if you have a you know a month-end checklist, you can build out a checklist, assign the different things to different people with different due dates, and then you could run a Power BI report to see what's your percentage of month-end completion, right? Instead of having to chase down, everyone say, hey, you know, um, hey Jesse, did you close that did you run depreciation? Hey, so and so, did you do that? You can just basically run a report and see what the percentage is and where you're at and where the bottlenecks might be. You know, it's one more tool in the toolbox of like being able to automate and you know avoid emails, right? Because that's where things get typically lost. Um, and then insights. So this insights section is interesting, varying degrees of usefulness again. You have a my accounts, my vendors, there's a my items and my customers, depending on your role. Things that you might be pinning to keep an eye on. So here, I pinned a few accounts. I've pinned the petty cash, my doubtful allowance, and some prepaid and deferred stuff. Just because maybe this is something I want to keep an eye on. Maybe I want to be mindful of what my AFTA is, my allowance for doubtful accounts, to make sure that we're not going too far in our write-offs and bad debt, side of things. Maybe I want to monitor the petty cash balance because I'm like, okay, we have way too much in our float or whatever, right? So, um, or it goes into negative, and then you're just like, what's that all about, right? So you can pin some accounts here to keep an eye on that might make sense to you. Same thing on my vendors. There might be some vendors that you want to keep an eye on as well. Maybe the relationship is kind of tenuous, let's say, or maybe there's vendors that are noisier than others. You want to make sure they get paid sooner than others, and you could just keep a little list here. It's kind of like a favorites that you can have on there. You also have a report inbox and a Power BI report section here. So report inbox you might have some report that you schedule to run at the end of every day or once a week or something. Maybe it's a aged AP or something like that. Maybe it's, I don't know, the fixed asset listing or trial balance or something. In any event, you can set it on a schedule, and then it'll run at your scheduled time, and it'll show up here in the report inbox. And then again, going back to that cloud storage, you can save them to your OneDrive as well if you want to share it to someone who's outside your organization, or maybe not outside your organization, but maybe just doesn't have access to Sparkrock 365, right? The other thing you have are Power BI reports. And in the beginning, this is going to be pretty light, but I get the sinking sensation with you guys. This is going to be a big piece of your overall reporting strategy. And if for the uninitiated, Power BI reports are, you know, they're dashboards and reports that are very interactive, very clicky, and very intuitive. Um, and actually, I do have a Power BI little bit that I'm going to talk about when we go over dimensions, just to kind of illustrate what dimensions are. But that's kind of this the role center in a nutshell. Now, you as a user who logged in, you can personalize this page a bit. So let's say you want to move stuff up, or you're like, I don't really need my vendors. I can just hide that. If you click on the gears icon again, instead of going to my settings, we're going to click on personalize. And once you do that, you get into this personalized mode. It's already showing you stuff that I've hidden. But let's say we go up here and I want to move this around. I can just drag it over, I can click on it. I can hide that bit. And then once I finish my personalization, you see everything shuffles around to kind of fit nicely now together. We're going to do more personalization on different pages because the role center is probably the least useful place to do personalization. But on other pages where you're transacting or you're looking at lists of stuff, that's going to be more relevant because you're going to be like, I don't care about looking at the postal code or zip code or whatever. So you might want to shuffle things around. You might want to hide stuff. You might want to freeze panes, and we'll do all that. But before I move on to the search function and pages, any questions at all about the role center? Nope. Okay. I get the feeling that the questions around this will be a lot more on the admin side once we get to that kind of side of things, which is how do we assign people to roles? How do we prevent them from switching roles? All that kind of good stuff, right? So that one is a spoiler alert, going to happen a few weeks from now with the admin team. All right, so now my favorite function, the search function. And the reason why it's my favorite function is I never remember where anything is in the system. So oftentimes you'll see me, I'm clicking around trying to find out, okay, where is my, let's say, I don't know, where are my posted invoices? Oh, there they are. So you could you could obviously click around like me, like a blind mice. But what you could also do is you could search. So you can click on the little magnifying glass up here, or you can do Alt Q on your keyboard if you're one of those people who like keyboard shortcuts. I see Jessie smiling a bit because I feel like she's the type to do that. Um, but here is where they call it the tell me function. It's, because they want to make it sound like it's smarter than just search, which it is. But, effectively here you tell it what you want to do. Let's say I want to find my vendors. As soon as I type in vendors, there's different sections that appear in my results. There's stuff that it found on this page itself, right? There's stuff that it found system-wide under pages, and then there's stuff that it found system-wide under reports. So as soon as I see vendors, as soon as I type in vendors, I can see on this page, I have two things that are related to vendors, which are payment journal and purchase and payable setup. But I also have like other stuff that it found. And this is what I'm actually going to focus on, is that I can click on show all to see all the pages that are vendor related. So maybe instead of going to vendors page, I want to go to the vendor bills page or something. Um, or maybe I want to run a report, in which case I'll click show all next to the reports, and I want to run a, 1099 something, something or another, right? I'm not the most savvy with 1099s, I will admit. So, um, or yeah, you might want to run a vendor trial balance or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of how search works. It's like you type something, you find the results, and you click on it, you go there. But you'll notice that as I'm moving along, this little like ribbon, it's a bookmark. This little bookmark icon appears on the right. It's filled in for the vendors because I already have that pinned to my vendors, to my bookmark bar. But maybe I want to pin pay vendor as well. So I can click on that little bookmark icon. It's telling me, yay, we added it. And now when I go to my role center, let's back out of here, I can see pay vendor is now bookmarked. So that's kind of how you bookmark and pin stuff to your homepage. All right, so using the tell me function again, I'm going to go to my vendors, and this is a list page of my vendors. I click on that. All right, so usually when it first shows up, it's kind of in this condensed form, but you can click on this little expand button to show you to take up more real estate on your screen. All right, there's a lot on the screen, so don't worry, we're going to break it down. What I'm going to start with is this little thing up here, this blue bar. Remember in that My Settings page, you could disable notifications. These are what those notifications look like. So if I expand this, it's telling me you can create contacts, you can help us improve our services, all this kind of stuff, right? So you can leave the notification or you could disable it, which honestly, just disable it because it's so noisy. There's so much noise. But yeah, when you click on that, it goes away. And then now I have access to my full list page here. All right. So again, lots to cover here, but I'm going to start with the top right section. There's a few things you can do. You can pop out this page. So next to the expand and kind of contract view that we were playing with earlier, you can pop out the page. And what does that do? That opens it in a new window. So when, using my keyboard, I can snap this to the right, I can snap this to the left, and now I can have a side-by-side kind of view of stuff if in the event that I want to kind of do that kind of thing, right? So there are this does come in handy a lot, right? The snapping, because sometimes you're doing an invoice and you want to, I don't know, look up something on the right-hand side, maybe something a posted invoice in the past. So you can have your posted invoices here, you have your new invoice here, and you could, cross-reference and do stuff like that. I'm just gonna go ahead and close this and re-expand my list there. I'm gonna go back to my vendors page. All right, and again with these notifications, again with them. That's why I like to disable them because they always pop up. So this is showing me as well that it's a bookmark page. Again, I can bookmark it from here, or I can unbookmark it. This little I icon, the little letter I, is information, right? So if I click on that, this thing on the right opens up, and this thing is called a fact box pane. So the fact box pane has facts on it, right? So it's information about the record you've clicked on. So it's a little bit of a, as I click away, it's going to show me more and more stuff. There's very little transactions or data in the system, so you're not really seeing much uh, much stuff here, but as I click in, I can see there's a little statistics showing me what's their current balance, what are the total of outstanding orders, how much have we received but not invoiced yet. More relevant in an inventory-centric environment for that one. But you can see outstanding invoices, payments, refunds, when was the last time you paid them. And then as well here, similar to the role center, there's little cues that show you how many quotes, how many orders, how many, whatever you have here. And when you click on them again, it's you can drill down to see the underlying orders or invoices that make up that number. So again, the name of the game here is they're trying to make it as streamlined as possible for end users, but they have varying degrees of success doing that, to be honest. In any event, yeah, so that's the fact box pane. If you want more real estate, you can always, hide it. So that nifty little animation there is a hide show. There's this function too, the layout options. This is a bit gimmicky, to be completely honest, because what you can do is you can switch between a list view to like a tile view. So here I've uploaded a few logos to show you what that could look like. So you could have little logos, of the companies you work with. You could have employee pictures if these are employee vendors, that kind of stuff. This is probably a little more useful on the inventory side, to be completely frank, because sometimes it's useful to see a picture of the item that you're interacting with. But on vendor side, less useful. But still, it's an option if you want to. Personally, this stuff, gives me anxiety. Like, so I'm just gonna go back to the list view. Uh, yeah, to see the view like that. So that's this button here. The filter one, I'm gonna skip over because we're gonna go into filtering in a little more depth in a bit. Um, and then there's the option to share to teams, open in Excel, or edit in Excel. These are very useful because from like virtually any list page you can do this. You can export the list into Excel. And you can also, you can highlight records here and just do Control C on your keyboard, and it tells you that you copied it. And so at that point, you can also paste it into Excel and all that good stuff. So lots of Excel integration in the product for sure. Um, but moving over to the search side of things, and yes, I'm completely glossing over the ribbon for now, but moving to the search side of things, if I search for something, let's say I'm looking for the word market. This is a cross-column search. So it's going to look across the address, the phone number, the city, everything to find the word market in there. And I can see, there's a bunch of different. Let's look at elegant marketplace. And I'm going to open up that statistics or the fact box again. And this one is one that we actually loaded with a balance. So you can see here that there's a balance of like roughly 15K. I can click in that. I can see the subledger entries that make up that total. Looks like there's 3 invoices. They're all with a due date of March 30th. I can see the remaining amount on these. I'm not going to get too much detail about this stuff because we'll cover it in the AP side of things. But in any event, that's kind of how that works, is that anywhere you see a little underline, you can drill down and see what's going on. You could also see any documents down here. We brought those in as journal entries, so they're not showing up as posted invoices, but had we done invoices and post them, you would see a 3 here because we had those 3 transactions, right? So that's kind of the search function. It's very handy. I find it very useful. The other thing you can do is sort. So you click on the little down arrow, you can do ascending, by any of the columns that you like. You can ascend by vendor number or by name or whatever the case may be. You can also move and hide columns around like we did before by clicking the gears icon and personalizing. So I'm going to go ahead. I want to set a freeze pane after the name. So I'm going to click here and set a freeze pane. And that way when I scroll to the right, it'll freeze that. Yeah, see, that's a lot better. And then maybe I don't really care about location code. I'm going to hide that. I like the balance, but I'd like it to see it a little more to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that over to right next to the, maybe there. Yeah, let's put it right there. Yeah, I don't know. In any event, so that's kind of how you personalize stuff. You click on the personalize, and you can move stuff around, hide stuff, and anything that you hid or is hidden, you can click on this add field button, and it's going to show you a list of fields that you can add in. So there's a lot of stuff there. So zip codes by default are hidden. Email addresses by default are hidden, but you can just drag them in. I want to see email addresses, and then you click done, and then well, it looks like we don't have any in the system, but you get the idea. You can drag those in, and then you can obviously sort and filter by those two. All right. The other thing you can do, like we said before, is you can share stuff to teams. So if I'm going to like that elegant marketplace, I click on the balance. I can see these three transactions. I can click up here. I can open it into Excel. Let's start with that actually. And when you open Excel, it formats it as a table. So right off the bat, you can put in, you can put in your slicers or whatever the case may be, by document type. There's only one, so this is kind of silly. But yeah, or you can go ahead and you can insert a pivot table off of it, just drag in your fields. Let's say we want to see by due date or something. They're all due the same day. So again, that's kind of silly. But then I can bring in the remaining amount and, you know, I can format it and do all the lovely stuff you can do with pivot tables. So lots of fun there. Let's put in the most absurd pie chart. Why not? There we go. Yeah, nice pie chart. I was reading an article recently about how pie charts are becoming less and less useful because they don't really say much, to be completely frank. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, you could do stuff like that, which is really useful. That whole, open an Excel function up here. You can also share to teams. So this one is admittedly a newer function, so I haven't had a lot of client feedback on how they feel about this thing. But I think it's useful because you could send it to one of your colleagues and say, hey, do you mind paying these? The vendor is quite irate, and we're renegotiating. If I could spell, a contract or whatever. And then you click on share, and it sends a link that once they click it, it takes them basically to this exact page, assuming they have permission to that. This is very important. So this thing, all this sharing stuff respects permissions. So if you're trying to send payroll information to someone who doesn't have access to that, they click the link, it'll say, sorry, yeah, I don't have permission to this. But anyway, so this is something you can do. You share it to teams. It's a neat new function. I'd be curious to know how you guys use it and how you guys feel about it. Because I don't know, sometimes it's gimmicky, sometimes it's useful, right? But anyway, this again being a Microsoft product at its core, there's a lot of these touch points with Microsoft. So the edit in Excel, open in Excel, share to teams. And you'll notice I didn't really showcase the edit in Excel. And the reason for that is that I can't, because I'm on a guest license on your instance. Um, I don't have permission to do that. But this is what it looks like. You click on edit in Excel. You sign in with your Office 365 in Excel. So this is really neat. Oh, it worked. Huh. Well, this is good. I can demo this then. Hey, you can come in here and you can update stuff like send flowers with the checks. I don't know. You can add change address information, update name and contact details. You can do all that stuff. And once you do all your changes, you can click on publish. And now it takes that and it pushes those changes back to Sparkrock 365. Very handy because the last thing you want to do is go one by one, open these up and manually do that kind of change. But with great power comes great responsibility. And one thing you can do with this, you can actually delete records. So please don't. Now, IT can restrict who has the edit in Excel capabilities. But mind you, there are checks and balances. You obviously can't delete a vendor who has any ledger entry. Like, there's this internal controls in the system, so it's not completely the Wild West here. But just bear in mind that this is the only place I've seen that lets you mass delete stuff, whereas everything else lets you mass update and insert. Anyway, I'm not going to publish that back because you probably want that vendor. I'm going to click Don't Save. But yeah, so that's the edit in Excel function. Very handy because if you're doing a journal entry, that's probably, I would say, probably one of the more common use cases. If you're doing a journal entry, you want to, you forgot to add a fund code or whatever, or you want to calculate some stuff, you might want to edit in Excel, do all that stuff in Excel, then push it back to Sparkrock 365, right? Yeah, so that's that. All right, I think I've kind of gone a little bit deep into this, but one thing I will quickly gloss over is just like anything else in the Microsoft 365 universe since Office, I want to say 2013, I don't know, 2010, I don't know. It has a ribbon, right? So this little ribbon here by default is collapsed, so you have more real estate. But if I click into these, and if I click on the pin button, it'll keep the ribbon persistent for now. And then you can click into the ribbon and see all the stuff you can do on here. Now remember, there's that search function, right? There's the search function to search on this page. That's where it comes in handy. Because again, if I am going and I'm menu diving like this, I'm going to be going and looking through a lot of stuff to find what I'm looking for. But let's say I just want to see the ledger entries. I can click on search and type in ledger. And it's showing me on the current page, it found this feature or this function or button or whatever called ledger entries. And you can click on that, and then now I can see the Elegant Marketplace's ledger entries. But yeah, that's the ribbon. And then from here, I can do stuff like I can create a purchase order um, for this vendor. So I click on that, it automatically creates a purchase invoice, and I can start, you know, making my order, all that good stuff, all at the click of a button. But yeah, that's the ribbon, and it is obviously the different ribbons on different pages. So you know, if you're not going to see the same functions on, let's say, an item master, but that's probably self-explanatory. That it's context specific. The ribbon up there. All right, this is a list page. Again, I probably said that a million times at this point. So list page, you see like a list of all your vendors. It doesn't have all the details of the vendor. If you want, and it's non-editable, you know, on the front end. I can't double click this and type in an address, right? That's where we're going to now go into the card view. So we have lists and then we have cards. And when you pick the vendor you want to look at, I don't know, I always kind of get a little bit of paralysis around which one to pick. Let's just pick 1000 bulbs. I click on that and it opens up this view. It's the same record, but a different page with a lot more details and a lot more and editability. So you can edit stuff here. You can also attach things here. This is useful. So let's say with the 1000 bulbs here, I click on the attachments. I can select a file here. And let's say I want to pick a price list, right? So maybe I have a price list here. I can double click that. And then I can put in description, say price list as of, you know, 4122 or something. And it tells me who at what time attached it, what kind of file it is, and all that good stuff. And again, you can copy it to your OneDrive. You can download it. You can do all that kind of stuff. So you can attach documents to records, which is very handy. And it's showing you that there's one document attached for this. I can add notes, so I can say, please only use PayPal with this vendor and not the credit card directly or whatever, you know, fraud issues in the past or whatever, you know, whatever your note may be. You can add a little note there and it'll show you like on what day who put a little note in there. So, you know, if you want to add that kind of stuff. You can add links. So if you want, you can say like direct link to the ordering portal, right? And it could be like www.1000bulbs.com/order form.aspx, you know, whatever the case may be, right? You can add links and all that kind of stuff here. So really cool functionality there. Again, you can add a picture, you know, if that's your thing. And then you scroll down and there's all this statistics that we saw, just like on the list page. But it looks like a very different page, right? So all these white fields, you can come in, you can start selecting and typing in data. These little arrows are option fields, so you can drop down and pick. You can't add to this. These are hard-coded options. But then there's stuff that have um, like the country and region. This is stuff where if you drop down, it says new on the bottom left, and you can select from full list. These are stuff you can edit. So, you know, if you need to, you can add a new country and, you know, yeah, you can add a new country and all that stuff. What else? So yeah, so everything on these card pages are broken into these little tabs, right? And if I click on the tab, I can collapse them if I want to save on some screen real estate. It's a little bit less claustrophobic now. But you can see it shows me a key highlights from that tab that I might need to know. And then as I expand them, you see there's a show less and show more button here. That's because, you know, you might have fields on there that you sometimes need, but not all the time. So maybe you hide them in the show less, yeah, in the show less function or whatever. Sorry, in the show more function. So if I click on that, I can toggle to see more and less fields. And again, using that personalize function, I can move fields around or I can hide fields. Let's say I don't care about intercompany partner codes. I can click on here and I can hide this field. And then let's say responsibly center is something that typically gets hidden when I do show less. I can say always show, right? And then stuff that I don't really need that often, like a name to field, let's say, I can click on show under the show more, right? So I can do stuff like that. I can move fields around. Maybe responsibly center is something that I really want, to appear somewhere else. I can go ahead and, drag that somewhere else. Yeah. And that's kind of how you can personalize these tabs. But other than that, that's kind of it, I think, in terms of distinguishing features of a card page. Any questions around card pages?
So, Ramin, those personalizations are tied to the individual with like whoever logged in, not to that role. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do as an administrator sweeping um, personalizations that affect all the people within a role. And actually, even as a user, you can go in and clear your own personalizations if you want to take it back to vanilla. Um, yeah. But yeah, they are tied to your specific login. So when you log in, it's just going to remember that for you, for this role, this is what you kind of did. And it's not going to affect, Megan's, for example, session or whatever, right? But that's kind of it. And yeah, again, going back to the concept where anything that's like an underline and blue, like a hyperlink, is a drill down. So you can always drill down to see like the underlying stuff. So if I click on that, I can see the balance, what makes up that total balance. If I go to subledger, all that gravy in there. And again, the ribbon here, similar functions to the list page. I think there might be a few more, like apply word templates, maybe send email, like all that kind of stuff. But again, these are things you can either um, dive through by clicking around and seeing stuff. And yeah, so you can merge vendors and customers too in case you have duplicates and all that stuff. Or you can use a search function up here to say, I want to merge. And then it'll find on the page, it finds that function. So search is your friend is what I'm getting at. Definitely grow to love the search. So we covered list pages, which are one type of page. We covered card pages, which are another type of page. I want to go back to oh yeah, I want to cover worksheet pages. So there are types of pages that look more like this. If I go to the general journals, for example, they look like this. It's more like a data sheet view, if we want to call it that. And these are what are called worksheet pages. So these are for all types of journals use this page. The lines section of like an invoice use these type of pages. And so these are very much, you tab and alt and shift tab to go back and forth. And you just fill them in going like left to right. Let's say we do a general journal entry or whatever. You can come in here and you can start. Okay, so that's one thing too. Yeah. So these drop downs, you can drop down and look for what you're looking for, or you can just start typing its name. So let's say I'm looking for, I don't know, you guys have a travel? Yeah. So if I type in travel, it'll find me all the GL accounts that contain the word travel in it. So client travel is what I want, let's say. I can tab and I can type in, uh, flight to client or whatever, and add more details like, you know, uh, cheapoair.com, I don't know, booking or whatever the case may be. And I can just tab and I can put in amounts. And the amounts, they have some basic math functionality. So if you're like, okay, it's 12,000 times 0.8, like 80% of it, you know, it'll figure that math out. Or you can do like, if you want to kind of grow stuff up or like, I don't know, you could do division too, like, 1200 divided by 12, which is kind of simple math, but you know what I mean? So you can do stuff like that. I find that kind of nifty. Um, but the other cool thing is that on a worksheet, you can copy and paste these from Excel as well. So I just copied the row. I can also copy the same row over and over again if I want to, and it copies everything on that line. Or if I had copied it from Excel, I can just copy and paste it from Excel as well. So if I just highlight the whole row or whatever, come in here and I can just highlight this row and paste. And yeah, I don't know if you saw that, it just appeared. But yeah, so you can copy and paste with Excel. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of Excel stuff for sure. And again, you have that edit in Excel function. In the event that you don't like working in this kind of claustrophobic, like within the system, you can always edit in Excel and push back their changes to to the system. I'm not going to dive too deep into general journals because again, we have a session, a training session for that. So, but this is just a different type of page that exists. So we had list pages which look kind of like this, but are non-editable. Then we had card pages, which are more like a single record with a lot of fields on it and tabs and all that stuff. And then we have worksheet pages like this, where you go in and you actually do some data entry and all that stuff. Now, combining those concepts together are document pages. So let's say we go to a purchase invoice. So again, here I'm in the list of purchase invoices. I'm going to click it to open up the quote unquote card, but this is actually a document because this is a combination of a few things. So I have card-like features here, right? So I have all these card-like fields, and then I have lines here that are more like a worksheet. So this kind of combines the two concepts of a card page and uh, a, a worksheet page together, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Cool. If you're at all involved in AP or approving AP, we'll be definitely getting into this in a lot more detail on the purchase invoice side. So again, this is one of those notifications we're saying, hey, you did it, you saved it, but you didn't post it. Are you sure you want to leave? If that's starting to bother you, again, you can turn that notification off here. It's that warn about unposted documents. God, I really dislike that warning. Um, in any event, yeah, and so to back, by the way, okay, yeah. One thing I should mention here is that you'll notice as I'm opening pages, you see a little bit of a faint silhouette of the page I had before back there. You can just click into that empty field to go back basically, or press escape kind of to close that. So it kind of maintains your trail in a way of what you're looking at, right? As you're clicking through and doing stuff. But again, whenever in doubt, you back out, you click on the company name, and you're back at your safe space, the role center. Um, and that's that. So filtering. This is fun. I admittedly think that one of the things you want to master sooner rather than later that will serve you infinitely well is filtering in the system, because the data's there. Sometimes you want to get something, you have something specifically in mind, but you want to be able to articulate that to the system that, no, this is what I want. This is where filtering comes in handy. So here I'm back on the vendors page. And yes, I do use the vendor page a lot because like my background's in AP, to be completely honest. But yeah, so on the vendors page, I'm going to click on this little funnel icon. I guess the funnel filter. Yeah. I click on that and it opens up this little thing on the left-hand side. This is called the filter pane. You see that there's a view here called all, which is just all my vendors. But then I have these options to add filters in. All right, so buckle up because we're going to go into some syntax here. I'm going to add a filter. Let's click on the add filter button, and I can choose what field do I want to filter for. Let's start with name. So I can start typing something like red. There's nothing that's called just red, right? But if I do red with a little asterisk there, it'll find me anything that starts with red. So it's red and anything after it. If I put an asterisk before and after the red, it'll include things like American Red Cross because it has the word red in it, but there's other stuff. Or buttered biscuit because the last three digits, last three words or letters, I should say, of buttered is red, right? So these are kind of syntax you can use to filter and really find what you're looking for. If I remove the asterisk after it, it'll find me anything that ends with red. So Jared, Mildred, right? So these are kind of some of the filtering syntax you can use. There are other ones. So let's start again with anything that starts with red. Let's say I want anything that starts with red or anything that starts with Americ. Well, I guess I could have put an A there. Hey, it's not. Yeah. So anything that starts with America or anything that starts with red. So this little vertical pipe, as it's called, a little line looking thing, which is just the shift and the button above your enter key on your keyboard, is an or function. So now I have anything that starts with red or anything that starts with America. So that's one of the operators you can use. You can also use the not operator. So I want anything that doesn't contain red in it at all. So now it filtered out of my list here anything that contains the word red. So I can do anything that doesn't contain red, and so the ampersand is like an additional filter on top of that. And anything that doesn't say anything that doesn't contain ang, or actually, and doesn't contain anything that contains ang. So the Angelas, the Angies, or whatever are filtered out now, as well as anything that contains the word red. So this filter syntax um, is something you can use. So that we looked at the not, we looked at the or, we looked at the and, um, we looked at the asterisk, which is the wildcard. You can also use some things like substitutes or specific letter substitutes. So I use like using going back to red, right? So that's three letters, R, E, D, right? If I put a question mark between the R and the D, it'll find anything that contains ROD, RED, RID, RAD. So basically I'm telling it any letter can be here, right? So that's like a specific, it's like a single letter wildcard, right? Um, so yeah, so these are the type of filters that you can kind of use. Um, the other thing you can do are intervals. So let's say you're not dealing with the name. It's not the name that you're filtering for. It's the vendor number. Let's go ahead and sort this. I can do something like I want to start with vendor 0001, but I only want to go to vendor 15. I can do dot dot B0015. Did I drop a zero? Uh, yeah, I did. Okay, there we go. So, and I think, did I miss a zero here? Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry. I clearly can't count digits. But yeah, so I'm saying basically here from vendor 001 to vendor 15. So the two dots indicates an interval, a range. On the left side of the dots is what you start from. On the right side is what you go to. So I can flip this around a bit to say I want to start with vendor 15 dot dot. And what that means is anything from vendor 15 onwards. I could do, yeah, so I could do stuff between numbers. So from 15 all the way to 18, let's say. And so now I have a filter here. Now I can stack my filters. So I've done one for the number now. And let's expand this out to like, I don't know, 48 or something. Let's get some more data in there. And anything that's in the city of Grand, just anything that starts with Grand. So any city that starts with Grand. So now I have any Grand Junction vendors, right, that are between vendor 15 to 48. I can, you could start stacking stuff up on top of that. So let me remove that city one. Let's say anything that's Texas or Colorado. And let's go back to the name filter we were doing before. So anything that starts with red. Yeah, so here now I have the Dallas, Texas. I have no idea how to pronounce that. But yeah, so the ready ice, I guess. Yeah, probably ready ice. Yeah.
For me, I've got a quick question for you. This is
Yes.
Jessie. Are all of the filters case sensitive?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can make them not case sensitive just by putting the @ sign before it. So, okay, going back to this. So if I do red, it's like, nope, nothing is that case. But if I do @ sign red, then it ignores case. Yeah, so you totally can, for sure. Now, the more I think useful thing here is that, okay, you have this filtered list, but let's say you want to reuse this over and over again. You can save this filter. So I can save this as any like red vendor from Texas and Colorado. That's a really long-winded filter name, but I can click on that. And so now I can toggle my views, and next time I come in here, I can click on that and I have my list here. And this isn't static. So as soon as a new vendor is created that has the word red in it from Texas or Colorado, it'll show up in this list. So this is now almost like a report, in a weird way, or query is probably more apropos. But yeah, so it's a reusable query here. Now I'm just filtering on basically contact information, but you can go a little bit deeper here. I'm going to remove those filters just to see a full list here. You can filter by balance too, and like any what are called flow filters. So I could put a specific date range in there to filter the balances by specific dates. I could put dimensional filters, like to say anything that uses specific dimension. Oh, I guess that's a bit of a spoiler alert for what we're going to cover later, which are dimensions. But you can also put numerical filters too. Let's say balance. So the balance greater than 0. So again, these greater than or equal to, I guess 1. Let's say. Yeah, so something like that. You can put in filters like that, and it's only showing me vendors that have a balance. And again, as soon as someone is paid off, they leave this list because this is a dynamic list, right? These filters are dynamic. Does that make sense? The whole filtering kind of process here. There are some nifty other syntax and stuff. I mean, I could probably talk about filters all day, but there's dynamic date filters you can put in too, to say like because the letter T is for today, right? And again, using that .t, I can do up to today, right? But then I could do things like minus CY, which is from the beginning of the current year. So now it goes current year to date. So this is now a year to date filter. But maybe I want to do this by quarter. I can do current quarter to date. Or if I just want to see for the whole quarter, I can do minus CQ .CQ. And what that does is beginning of the current quarter to the end of the current quarter. And this is dynamic. So again, next quarter, this will update to whatever that is. And so I can save this as a, current quarter thing. And again, on the vendor list, probably less useful. But if you think about the chart of accounts, if you think about, any transactional kind of stuff, this may take the place of a report, right? Because you have this dynamically updating page based on your own filters, right? Anyway, lots of cool stuff there. You'll notice I have the second tab here open because we do have a little bit of a help page here to go over some of the filtering syntax, because there's a lot to it, right? There's ranges, there's either ors, there's greater than, a lot of stuff here that you can definitely read up on, or if you need some refresher. There is another page too that talks more about date filters. Date calculation maybe. Entering dates and times. I don't know. Anyway, I'll find it. But yeah, so the whole CQ stuff that I did. Oh yeah, there we go. So there's a T, which is like the today date or whatever. But you can see C is current day, week, month, year, quarter, current week, current month, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I can send these links to you guys afterwards for sure. Any questions around at all around filtering? Because it is kind of an important thing to kind of to learn and start using. Nope, we good. All right. Sorry, listening to my voice for like hours on end is not the greatest experience. So maybe what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of a break. What do you guys feel comfortable? Do you guys want like a 10-minute break, a 5-minute break? What works for you?
Maybe 10. If that's okay with everyone.
Definitely. I will set the Google timer. Let's yeah. So we'll reconvene back in 10 minutes, and I'll do a quick kind of show of hands check once I kind of pop back on. All right. See you guys in 10.